you can't bootstrap it. You do need partners. You need the right people. People they cost money. You need that funding to get people in biotech. Raises the sort of the chasm, the valley of death that you need to cross over. That valley of death is you've got an idea, you've got a concept, and you've got to get over here, and it's very expensive. So we are talking, unless if you've got access to 30, 40, 50 million, fine, you can probably fund it yourself. But I would probably say if you've got access to 30, 40, 50 million, you'd probably not be starting a biotech company. You'd be doing something else. So I'd probably go and buy Bolton Wanderers, which is my football team. But hey ho, that's a different thing. You're looking at significant investments.
Welcome to the H-Files, the new series of the Hands-On Business podcast, where we dive deep into the world of healthcare leadership and the unique challenges facing small to medium-sized healthcare businesses. I'm Hakeem Adebiyi, and after years of helping businesses grow in various industries, I'm excited to focus on the area that I know the best, healthcare, one of the most dynamic and impactful sectors in the world today. In this series, we're going to explore what it takes to lead and grow in healthcare, from navigating the complexities of regulation and innovation to overcoming the everyday hurdles of building a sustainable business in this fast-paced environment. Each episode will feature real-world insights, expert interviews, and actionable strategies that can help you push your healthcare business forward. So whether you're a leader in the space or an entrepreneur ready to break into it, the H-Files is here to give you the edge. In 1976, two scientists working at Genentech inserted a human gene into a bacterium and changed medicine forever. That concept, radical at the time, laid the groundwork for the first genetically engineered drug, human insulin. Now, it took just under a decade for that idea to become a commercial reality. But once it did, it didn't just create a product, it launched the entire biotech industry. That story is a powerful reminder that in healthcare, it's never just about the idea, it's about navigating the science, the regulation, the funding, and the doubt, and still getting it to market. Now, today, I'm delighted to be talking to Nigel Theobald, who is the founder and CEO of N4 Pharma, and we're going to be talking about what the journey looks like today. His company is working on a novel delivery system for nucleic acid therapies, technology with huge potential, but also the same hurdles that I've just alluded to, proving the science, finding the right partners, and building towards a viable commercial future. So in this episode, we will be exploring what it really takes to go from concept to commercial reality and what lessons you can learn along the way. So thank you very much for coming on the show today, and welcome, Nigel.
Hakeem, I'm delighted to be here.
Brilliant. So we're going to get straight into it. But before we start getting into all the nitty gritty of N4 Pharma and the nucleic acid therapies, if you were, I ask everybody the same question at the beginning, if you were giving a piece of advice to someone who's trying to make an impact in their field of healthcare, what would that be if you had one piece of advice at the outset?
Well, as ever, I suppose it's like what the Romans ever done for us, if you quote the famous. I've got a couple of pieces of advice, really. I think the most important thing is that you have to be flexible and adaptable. If I think back, the example you gave earlier with Genentech, if I think back to the early days, you had time to develop products. You had access to a huge amount of capital. And if you had an innovative idea and you just kept going with it, you would get there, you would make progress. But those days have long gone. You don't have that luxury of time anymore. It's a real fast-paced environment, even in the world of biotech, even though there's long-term progress needed. Quite often you find programs are ditched by large pharma, and that impacts your business. You're making great progress. One of the large pharma companies decides to ditch all their projects in that area. Investment just dries up in that space. So you've got to be able to be adaptable and flexible as things change. And nowadays it's all about delivering results. You don't have the time to progress. What I used to say was like a really nice, innovative idea. And the other thing, you've got to build a big team, a good team around you. No one can navigate this field by themselves. And there's a lot of people out there in the marketplace, and you don't want to be reinventing the wheel. So be fast, be flexible, and have a really good team around you.
No, excellent. And we were just talking about that, weren't we, off there, about actually having that in today's age, having a team in one location is not really going to cut it, especially in the sort of business that you're in, that actually your team is spread out across many different locations and different countries, actually, which is important. And then one thing you just said there, that fast pace and it's all about the results. Can you just elaborate when you say it's all about the results? What sort of results are people expecting to continue that funding flow and being able to continue on that journey from concept to commercial?
Yeah, so there's always milestones that you need to reach. The ultimate result is having you want a therapeutic product on the market in clinic treating people. But to get there, you've got to hit various targets. You've got to get through the preclinical phase, the phase 1 trials. So it's all about reaching those milestones and telling your investors and your shareholders what you're going to do, how you're going to aim to get there, and what your strategy is on how you're going to reach those different milestones. It's not the end result, but it's all the little steps that you go. And things work well along the way. Things sometimes take a bit longer. So it's navigating through that minefield of the different stages, because you have to work with, like you say, the regulatory environment, clinical environment, and things don't happen overnight in biotech, but you still have to reach certain milestones along the way.
And I'm sure that obviously when you got those milestones, nothing ever goes exactly according to plan. So in terms of keeping your investors on board when things, like you just said there, that sometimes it takes a little longer, how do you make sure that when those things are happening and it's taking a bit longer, that the investors are remaining engaged and they're not, oh, well, this is going to, it's not according to plan?
Yeah. Well, communication is critical. And the communication you need to do, whether you're a listed company like we are or a private company, will vary tremendously. And we can talk around that. There's a big difference between being a private biotech and a listed biotech. But you still have to communicate what you're doing. When you reach that, the results that you get, communicate what you've learned, the positives. I suppose the big issue I always find with the listed market is those listed shareholders, they don't want to hear anything other than positive news, right? So you have that sort of background that you're working with, and science is not a fixed journey. Research by its very definition is you're trying to find out something about what you're doing. And with research, some things work brilliantly and sometimes they don't work as well. And how you then communicate that to people is really important.
Yeah, no, exactly. So communication is the key, basically, and the watchword. So all right, now let's take a step back. If you can just introduce yourself and N4 Pharma, so the listeners can get a bit more of an understanding of your journey and also then the journey of N4 Pharma and where you're up to.
Okay, so I'm Nigel Theobald. I'm the chief exec, and you mentioned I'm also founder. I set this company up back in 2014 now. And we are a listed biotech delivering novel RNA therapeutics. The way we're doing that, we have a proprietary delivery system that we call Nuvec, and that allows us to deliver RNA therapy compounds into cells. And it's a unique spiky silicon nanoparticle. The structure is something that's what's patented, so it's patented around the world. You can imagine if you ever go walking and you get this sort of grassy stuff stuck on your shoes and your boots, it's like these seeds and burrs of grass. That's what our system looks like. It's a hollow core and it's got this spiky structure around it, and we attach the RNA into that spiky structure and deliver it into the cell. But the Nuvec system itself has got a number of different advantages. It's really good at protecting the payload. It's quite easy to make and manufacture, unlike some of the other systems like lipids. And very importantly, there's no unwanted immune response. When you're delivering something into the cell, you don't want the body to have an adverse reaction to it. Other things that Nuvec can do, we can put multiple RNA payloads onto each particle, and that's of really, really interesting importance when you're trying to look at different pathways. And the protective nature of our particle means we can deliver it orally as well. So you can swallow it in a capsule, get it delivered into the gut. So these are sort of key things. And the other thing that actually is really important, we can maybe come onto this in the field of gone are the generalist days where you can just deliver one thing into the liver. People are looking at targeting is crucial. People are looking at taking compounds and getting them to specific parts of the body. So being able to adapt your delivery system, which we can do by adding things like peptides or other targeting elements to it, we can actually get certain cells to take up the payload more effectively, and even just target specific cells. And that's really the holy grail of delivery for RNA therapeutics. So what we're doing at the moment, we have a program. Okay, you go. Yeah.
No, so carry on, carry on.
Just lastly, we have a program which we call N4 101, and that's a proof of concept for all of our delivery systems. So it's an orally delivered product for IBD containing two different RNA. One is an siRNA to stop the production of TNF alpha, which is what causes IBD. And the other is an mRNA to produce an extra anti-inflammatory response. We can put two different siRNA or two different RNA, but what we have is one to try to stop the bad inflammation, and the other one trying to promote the good anti-inflammatories associated with IBD. And this we're delivering orally, and we're targeting macrophage cells, so we're adapting our particle to target macrophage cells, which are in the gut, which is what you need to get it taken up. So the reason we're developing this product is not only is it's a really interesting product, but it showcases all those key benefits. So we're doing two things at once. We're getting a product along the pathway, but we're also showing everybody oral delivery, multiple loading, and targeting. So it showcases what we do, because ultimately we're looking to license our platform as well to third parties to develop their own products.
Gotcha. So in other words, you've got two streams really, haven't you? You've got one which is basically the Nuvec, which is actually the delivery system, which, as you just said there, you can give it to third parties for their products. And then you've got the second stream, which is the N4 101, which is actually your own product using the Nuvec system.
Exactly, yeah. Because ultimately that's our aim. We want to be an RNA therapeutic company, but we have to go through, we talked about capital. To develop your own products, you need 20 millions of revenue to actually go through clinical trials. And we're not at that stage now. So we have to license our delivery system to third parties. And as we do that, we get revenue coming in, our share price will grow. It allows us to raise more funds. So it's a journey. But if you look at all the platform companies that started out years back, they've all become therapeutic companies using their own platform. So it's an ultimate goal that we want to, and it's a model that's well adapted in the marketplace. You can't make an ultimate living just out of selling a delivery system. You have to actually move on to have your own products, but you have to then work with people in the early days to license your delivery system.
Okay. And so what's your background? How did you get into biotech then and getting into the RNA therapy, etc.?
Very good. Personally, my background is I'm not a scientist. So I'm an economist by training, and I was introduced to the world of healthcare back in when I worked at Boots the chemist. So in Boots the chemist, I was responsible for developing novel products. So really focusing on consumer needs. So what do people want? Therefore, getting products to market. And when I set N4 up, I was focused on what do people look at? What are the needs in the clinical space? And I went to go and find technology, which is our Nuvec system, that would actually solve a particular need. The need in this case being the delivery of nucleic acids. So it's, as I said, build a team around you. I'm not a scientist. I have a very strong team of former synthetic chemists, biologists, pharmacokinetic experts, the people that you need to actually take the product to market. But my role was the original vision on what was required in order to generate a new delivery system in this space.
Yeah, so it's about identifying the need, really, isn't it? And then, which is what you've done. You've identified an area for a novel delivery system, and then you've then built your team around that to make sure you've got the right people who can deliver on that vision, which is obviously very smart. But it also, the reason why I asked that is because I think a lot of times people think that to set up a healthcare company, you have to be a scientist, which your evidence to that's not actually the case, as long as you've got the intelligence to understand that you need scientists around you for the science, and each person have their own specific unique attributes for building a business. So in terms of your journey through that, you started at Boots, you then set up and just give us an insight as to people who are listening in terms of, so what were the challenges, and then what have been the great things, the key things you'd say these are important for you to take into account if you're setting up a company and you're trying to deliver a successful startup and get from that concept to commercialization?
Yeah, well, I think the key, when you set something up yourself, the key thing is having access to early stage seed capital. And I did it twice. So I set up a previous business, and when I did that, I didn't have access to the capital. So I was the sort of head behind it. I was the driver of the actual business, but I didn't have a massive stake in it. So that made it very hard. But when I wanted to set up my own business, what I did is basically I sold all my shares in that previous company, and I used that capital to set up N4, because you've got to have seed funding. So what we were doing is we were looking at, say, this technology that originally came from the University of Queensland, and we had another couple of technologies we were scouting as well. And you have to do the work to say, well, is it going to work? Go through the likely commercial realization. Does this have legs? Has it got a competitive advantage? Is it easy to make? Are there people out there that can make it? Quite often people that are doing all this wonderful science, and then they take it out and say, right, now can you make it for me? And everyone goes, no, I haven't got a hope in hell of making that, mate. That's just impossible. So you have to think through everything. And I think that a lot of that comes back to my consumer healthcare days. Think through, why do people want it? How are they going to use it? When are they going to buy it? Which part of the shelf they're going to pick it up off? So you have to think out all through these different things about your technology. And having done that work, we scouted the Nuvec system, and we realized it really did have a lot of innovative capability and legs. So it was at that point that we needed to build and expand. So I had to build a bigger team around me, get the people involved, and actually get some more significant funding in place rather than the seed. Because I funded everything from the start, but you need to have access to capital to do that. And I was lucky with my previous company, as I said, I sold my shares and I had access to that. But it only takes you so far. I didn't have access to funding that will take us into clinical trials. So we had to then look at raising more funds, and we had to decide whether to go private or public at that time.
And on that point, what was the rationale that made you decide to be listed as opposed to stay private?
Yeah, this is an interesting story. So I think we did a hybrid. We ended up doing both. So initially, I had private investment into the business, and we had a company that was an investment company that took a large stake in N4, and in return for that, it was providing access to the company to develop the Nuvec, the systems that we were working on. But it was also then saying, well, actually, maybe you can find new technology from universities, and we can have a whole pipeline of different things that are coming through. So they had a big stake in the business, but unfortunately they were in a listed company, and they got themselves in a difficulty, and they found their shares suspended and couldn't carry on. So we were in a unique position that we had a choice to make. Do we carry on with this company that owned 50% of our business, or do we try and do a reverse takeover onto the market? Even at that stage, we were quite a small company, so we decided to go do the reverse route so that we could list, get that reverse takeover. So we went down that route, and that's what took us onto the market. I would say that we were very early for the market, and normally you would build yourself up to a decent size. But back in 2017, when we did that, the AIM market was quite open to reverse takeovers. So today it's very difficult. So it's difficult to do reverses today, and it's difficult to do IPOs. So, we were in a good position at the time. So we took the opportunity to go to the market early.
Excellent. And in terms of your business at the moment, what is your company strategy? I mean, I suppose you've kind of alluded to it in terms of the two arms, but what's your long-term goal? What's the vision? What's the mission?
Long-term, we want to be an RNA therapeutic company. So we want to develop our own products. So our strategy is to showcase what Nuvec can do. Because if you just take a step back about what RNA, you mentioned some of the RNA. We can talk a bit more maybe about COVID and how that's completely changed the landscape for RNA therapeutics. But RNA is negatively charged. It's very difficult to get into cells. So in the early days, people were just injecting RNA into the body, and it didn't work. So you've got to have it in a delivery system, and that delivery system has got to be able to protect that RNA, get it into the cell, and then release it. So having a delivery system is crucial. So that's what we have. We've developed a delivery system to work with this fragile nucleic acid called RNA. So early term, we're looking to license that to people to develop. So we're building a data set around that, showing exactly what it does. We have a lot of data from the past, but we're developing more data now. But ultimately, we then want to use that delivery system to develop our own products. So it's a longer term strategy with steps along the way for licensing the Nuvec system.
And then in terms of beginning, middle, commercialization, where are you along that pathway?
Well, we've been spending quite a lot of time working on getting the data together. And when we first started, we looked at the whole area of RNA therapeutics, and we were trying to say, well, what's an area which was really struggling? And one area that was really struggling was DNA vaccines. So no one had actually managed to get DNA vaccines anywhere near market. We knew we could load DNA onto our system incredibly well. It was a good solution. So we were spending a lot of time developing DNA vaccines, getting data, proof of concept. And then as I mentioned, COVID then came along. COVID did two things. So back to the area of needing to be flexible. Everybody's developing products. RNA products were taking years to develop. COVID happened, and then within 15 months, we had 2 RNA vaccines on the market. But they weren't DNA vaccines; they were messenger RNA vaccines. Biotech and Moderna, they're the 2. And the other ones sort of had various issues, but no one actually got a DNA vaccine to market. And so in that space, overnight, DNA vaccines just got hammered. They were just dead. And my mind, they're dead in the water, because mRNA works really well, proven to work, proven to be able to bring to market really quickly. And DNA, because when you're delivering DNA, we're very good at delivering the DNA into the cell. But then once it's in there, it then has to get into the nucleus, it's to come out of the nucleus, produce mRNA, then produce an antigen. So the downstream effects are reliant on the thing that you're putting into the cell. And if that hasn't been developed fully, or it struggles to get back out of the cell, then you don't have a product. Whereas with messenger RNA, you're already one structure away from DNA, you're putting it in, and you're actually producing more of it. So those guys prove that you can use RNA in that space, but it also meant that DNA vaccines are going to, struggle to get to market. So we had to take a big strategic decision, because we said, look, we can't carry on. We had to do a review. So we looked at the whole aspect of DNA, RNA, messenger RNA, and siRNA, small interfering RNA. And we decided that small interfering RNA, siRNA, was by far the best thing for us, because with mRNA vaccines and mRNA products, lipids, they do okay. People have proved, you can do a vaccine with the lipid nanoparticles. So why do you need another delivery system? But for siRNA therapeutics, where you don't want any unwanted side effects, or you don't want the system to go to the liver, which lipids do, or you don't want viral vectors, which cause a big unwanted immune response, then you need a new novel system. That's where we felt we were, because we know we're really good at getting into the cell. So we can deliver siRNA into the cell, and there's no downstream effects needed then. Once siRNA is delivered into the cell, bang, it works. It'll knock down the gene of interest. So as long as you can get it into the cell, you might want to target a specific cell, or you might want to get 2 or 3 things into that specific cell, which is what we're doing. But you just have to get it into the cell, and then it works. So we took that big strategic decision to switch away from DNA into siRNA development.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And there's a couple of things you were saying previously, and during that answer as well, when you were talking about, when you're setting up and you try, and the key things that you need. So number one was you were talking about the competitive advantage. So I was just interested to know what research did you do, and what research do you think companies need to do to check what else is out there before you start spending copious amounts of time and money on developing something, and then you find out, as you said, either actually there's somebody who's doing it better, or it's difficult to make it. How do you go around actually ensuring that you understand all those things before you really start sinking serious money into it?
But the first thing you do is you need to start understanding what the limitations are of the systems that are out there. So, we're back to the example of messenger RNA and with lipids. We know lipids go to the liver. So if you've got a system and you're trying to target the liver, or you need the liver to work that, hey, use a lipid. Don't use a different system. Go with what works. But if you want to get it somewhere else, or you don't want it to have that immune response, so we worked out what the problems were with other systems, and we spent a lot of time and effort looking at building our data set, so how we are different to the other systems. So the fact that we can do multiple loading, the fact that you can do oral delivery. You can't do oral delivery with lipids; they break down in the gut. It's as simple as that. But with our system, you can get it into the gut. We can do targeting. It's easy to make. So we got our key points of difference by looking at first what's not working, what are people not wanting. So back to my consumer days. So Why are people not choosing a particular product? What do they want? What do they not like about this product or that product? And therefore you develop something. Everybody says, oh, I've got a lipstick and I don't like red. So you go and develop something that's not red. It's just a silly example, but you've got to understand what people like and what they don't like. So we know our system is good at, but now what we have to do is we've just raised 1.7 million because we're building our data set specifically around siRNA so that we can present that data to third-party licensing opportunities, because we need to know more about specifically our product now, not just about that it's better than the others, but where does our product go in the body, its initial safety and toxicity. Some more efficacy data that we're doing with our IBD product show that we can make it and the specification of the product is consistent each time we make the batch, and that it's scalable, because there's no one's going to work with us if this product isn't scalable. So we now enter the real sort of commercial feasibility work, and that needs significant money, but that's very focused now on the specific application, which is siRNA delivery.
Excellent.
We know, so that's where we spend money today.
And just in terms of, because a lot of the people that listen to this, because obviously you're in biotech, which is still med tech, but slightly different and probably more expensive. So do you think it's possible, and do you think it would have been possible for you to bootstrap it yourself? Because obviously you started off with the shares from your previous company. Do you think you could get to this stage bootstrapping it, or do you just say, well, actually, no, you really do need seed investment and then to do different round of investment to actually really get a biotech product off the ground?
You can't bootstrap it. You do need partners. You need the right people. People around, they cost money. You need that funding to get people in biotech. Raises the sort of the chasm, the valley of death that you need to cross over. That valley of death is you've got an idea, you've got a concept, and you've got to get over here, and it's very expensive. So we are talking, unless if you've got access to 30, 40, 50 million, fine, you can probably fund it yourself. But I would probably say if you've got access to 30, 40, 50 million, you'd probably not be starting a biotech company. You'll be doing something else.
Yeah, very likely.
So, I'd probably go and buy Bolton Wanderers, which is my football team. But hey ho, that's a different thing. You're looking at significant investment and some very serious science, because these things are not. This isn't a cosmetic. This isn't. This is something that's going into the human being, and it's got to do that. It's got to be 100% accurate, 100% safe, and effective. Otherwise, and that requires a lot of money. So it's not an industry that you can play in.
Yeah. I just want to make that, because I know a lot of my listeners are in medtech, and I just want to make sure, because I know a lot of people in medtech think I can bootstrap it and I can go slowly. But when you talk about high science and RNA and mRNA going into cells, then I think you're in a different space altogether. So one of the things you said in that last answer was, build the right team around you. So that's a really interesting concept. How do you ensure that you get those right people? What's your process in saying, right, well, we need somebody for X. How do I then go and get the best in class or the best person that you think that you really want to target?
Well, I'll answer that in a second. But if you just step back to that we've been going for quite some time now already, and we have spent a lot of time and effort on slowly developing our system, because we haven't had access to 30 million overnight. We haven't been able to do 200 experiments at a time that Pfizer would do. So we have been. So I'm not saying it's bootstrapping, but we have been taking our time, and we're now at that inflection point where things are getting really serious, and we need to, and we've got the ability to move. And we've got a low market cap of 4 or 5 million, and we would need to be in the 300 millions, and we got a plan to get there. But you talk about the people, especially back in the early days. We're a virtual company, so we're head offices in South Derbyshire, but we have people all over the country. We use different contract research organisations, manufacturers. Fundamentally, we use contractors and consultants to give us that flexibility. I mentioned back to being able to change. So if we'd have built a team around us that was 100% focused on DNA vaccines, when that change happened, we'd have been dead, because we'd have had no skill set. So we made sure we had contractors that had various skill sets that we can turn on, turn off, and move to different places. So as we move away from just pure DNA into siRNA, we can flex the people that are required. Use contract, and there are plenty of recruitment consultants out there who specialize in finding people who are happy to work. on a contractual sort of consultant basis. Not everybody wants full-time employment. So we tend to have people that work for us maybe 2.5 days a week. Might have other clients as well. But so we're tapping into expertise from all over. So they're learning from us, they're learning from other clients. Obviously, no confidentiality is broken, but people learn on the job and actually can bring those skills to you from their previous experience. And given the sort of consolidation that's going on in the pharma biotech industry, there's a lot of people out there. Yeah, the classic is Northwest, and we do a lot of work up in Alderley Edge. And that's the ex-AZ site. And that ex-AZ site is full of ex-AZ employees that have set up their own businesses. And there are some huge talent there, some really good talent up in the Northwest. And we tap into that as we do other places. There's good talent up in Edinburgh with Bio Trinity and Oxford, Cambridge. There's plenty of consultants around there, ex-GSK particularly. Everybody who seemed to work at GSK is now setting up as consultants in and around the Oxford, Cambridge area.
So basically your advice is flexible, and it's what you said right at the beginning, actually. Your advice is when you're recruiting, recruit for obviously talent, more important, well, just as importantly, flexibility and adaptability and a broad skill base is what you were saying, really, isn't it? So not too broad, but actually they've got a couple of different hats, so that if you do have to pivot, and I'm assuming that goes for the attitude of the individual as well, isn't it? Because sometimes people can be very fixed in their ways. I do this, and they're not really prepared to pivot, which is when you start in a business, you need to be prepared to pivot, as you've shown yourself.
Absolutely. The most important question we ask of anybody that's doing the recruitment work for us is, have these candidates got that flexibility in the approach? What wouldn't work for them, what wouldn't work for us, is they come out of big pharma saying, this is how I do that. This is I go from A to B to C to D, and this is what I do along the way. What we want is people who are able to work in a small company, work on themselves at times, be able to get together, take the initiative, take the lead on programs, work with different contract research organizations. So you have to have a very good collaborative mindset as well as the expertise. And those people they're not sitting there knocking down the door. You have to find them. Typically work with them for a bit, and as you work with them for a bit and they work with you, it all starts to gel, and you get a more successful team.
Yeah, I think, as you said, there's some really good people out there that have come out of big pharma actually and set up their own businesses. So I'm not going to say this is a better time than any other time, but it is a good time that there's lots of flexibility out there in the marketplace. And then you talked about milestones earlier on. So what N4 Pharma milestones should potential investors and industry watchers look for in the near future from you guys?
Yeah, so as I said, we've done a lot of data on, so we know how Nuvec works, and now we're building our data pack for commercial licenses. So we're doing further preclinical data, looking at our IBD proof of principle, proof of concept product. We are doing work on our CMC, so we're making sure we can characterize and scale up. So there's a lot of work required on the CMC, chemistry, manufacturing controls. I use acronyms all the time in this industry. We're also looking at academic collaborations, so look at specific areas which are of interest to, that maybe it's around targeting, maybe it's around multiple myeloma, where we can look at maybe an oncology application, but maybe a grant-funded academic collaboration, but ultimately then licensing deals with major pharma partners, which we expect, we think will be about 12 months, build that data pack up, and then we will be in a good position to hopefully start getting some license deals. And then that's the short term. Then long term, we're moving on to more products ourselves. But there's lots of news that will be coming out based on that program, and we'll be updating the market soon on precisely what that program is going to be.
Well, excellent. That sounds very, very exciting. And how do you, and I always ask this question to people, how do you keep going when, the road to where you want to get to is always a long one? You said you set up the business in 2014. So that's 11 years that you've been going. And along that way, there's challenges, there's things that don't go according to plan. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you going through those dark times?
What a very good question. I'm glad you asked that for everyone. I want to see the Nuvec system making a difference. Having taken this science through from the early days of collaborating over the academic principle, I want to see it on the market. I don't think will I see it actually 10 years' time actually in clear? Who knows? But I really want to see it making a difference because I know it's really good. I know it's innovative. I know it works. And I just want to see it come through. And so I think that drives me more than anything else to want to see somebody working with this system to actually develop products in this space, because new systems are needed, new solutions are needed in unmet clinical environments. So I'm not saying I'm truly altruistic, but that's what I want. I want to see this technology work and in use. So I keep driving. And you say there are huge ups and downs. It is a real roller coaster ride in biotech. There are times when you're flying, and there are times when you're thinking, what is going on here? But you have to be resilient and be focused on the fact that I want to see this thing in commercial products.
Yeah, no, and I mean, this is what every founder says, pretty much the same thing. I think if you haven't got that clear desire and passion to see that product, that service on the market because you think it will do good or you think it'll improve something significant, I think it is very difficult to go through those troughs and come back out the other side without having that real clear and clarity of this is what I want and this is my passion for why I'm doing it. I think that's a really important point. So my last question is for the listeners, if there 1, 2, 3 pieces of practical advice that you can give to anyone who's in a biotech or a startup, and how do you lead that business to success with clear visions and values?
I think it will come back to what I said earlier. You've got to have a clear vision and you've got to communicate that to your shareholders. You've also then got to decide what's the right way to get there, private versus public. And we talked about the different ways that you can do that. I think I will come back to, you have to be flexible. You've got to be able to pivot. You've got to be able to adapt to changes in the marketplace. And therefore, you've got to really keep close to the market. You've got to try and work out what those emerging trends are, what other people are doing, because there are so many people out there in the biotech space doing similar things to what each of you are doing. I'm quite often asked, who are my main competitors? Well, that's a really hard question to answer because so many people are being adaptive and flexible themselves and can come into your market, can go out of your market. It's a very large industry full of small, medium-sized biotechs that the large pharma companies have said, okay, go ahead and find our solutions, guys, and we'll buy you for 500 million in the future.
Yeah.
But so you have that clear vision, but I can't stress more about how you have to be adaptable and flexible, but maintaining that vision of where you want to go.
Yeah, no, I think that is, as I always say at the end of my podcast, the perfect place on which to finish. We started actually talking about the flexibility and the adaptability, and we finished with exactly the same thing. And I think that's come through the whole of this episode, that actually, yeah, it's great to have the funding, it's great to have the vision, it's great to have the passion, but you need more than anything else to have a flexibility and adaptability in this business if you want to be able to go through and take it from a concept to a commercial entity. So no, I really appreciate your time, and I'm hoping that everybody now not only knows more about nucleic acids, and it's taken me back to my A-level biology days, thinking about the DNA and RNA, etc. But then more importantly, for people listening, that they listened and understood what it takes to actually get a product from concept to commercialization. I really appreciate your time, Nigel.
Thank you very much, Hakeem. It's been good to be here, and I've had great fun talking to you. Thank you.
Really good to get back to my biotech/pharmaceutical roots. Interesting that the key thing that we started the conversation with is what we ended with. Nigel said, for success and for leading and getting through those hard times, it's about being flexible and adaptable, and actually also recruiting for flexible and adaptable people. He closed talking about having a real clear vision. He talked about the best way to get to that vision and then keeping close to the market and understanding what the changes in the market, and to ensure that you're prepared to be flexible and pivot as and where required. And don't forget to pick up the show notes over at thesalesaccelerationformula.com/podcast/show-note. You'll also find an option to subscribe to our mailing list so that you can get notes for every single episode straight to your inbox. While you're at it, don't forget to tune in to next week's episode of my new 5 in 5 series, where I share 5 actionable takeaways in just 5 minutes from this episode, which will help you supercharge your business growth. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this podcast with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else who might find it valuable. Most importantly, keep the feedback coming so we can keep improving and bringing you more of what you love. Thank you very much for tuning in. And remember, keep listening, keep growing, and keep thriving.